Good morning, everyone. It is the Rangers review. The morning after, the night before, Athletic Club 2, Rangers 0. I'm still out in Bilbao. Jonny is back in Glasgow fighting through a cold, but we're going to speak through and bring you all the latest
Cold.
Rangers.
It's man
Cold?
flu, mate. It's
Man
worse than
flu.
the cold.
Okay. Well, we'll see if he can make it through. Derek is already in the air somewhere in Central Europe, so I'm not entirely sure where he is. But anyway, this video, of course,
Rushing back to Bolton for a Bolton game.
He is, yeah, exactly. The consummate professional. This video is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If you're looking to hand in your own transfer request at work, head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today. All the relevant links are in the description. And yeah, get your comments in. We wanna hear from you today because lots to discuss. And I know we were quite brief last night, so we will get to your view as well. Jonny, last night we spoke about the referee calls a lot, so we'll touch on that today briefly. But I want to have a wider discussion about the game, where it went wrong for Rangers, where it leaves them now, because they have 5 games before now in the end of the season. In the mix zone last night, all the players were keen to stress their season is not over. It is. They can still go and beat Celtic, and that would be nice, but you can't get away from the fact that it's the 18th of April and Rangers have absolutely nothing to play for. How often have we said that in the last number of years? Having had a bit of distance from the game, I don't know how much sleep you've had in your state. How do you look back on it? And I know you were speaking before before we came on air about the fact that penalty call is so big.
Yeah.
The fact that Barrie Ferguson have to shuffle his pack is so big. But is it fair to say, regardless, if you look over the 2 ties, it's probably just a step too far, given the chances Athletic created and those fine margins not going in Rangers' favour ultimately just compounded them to exit the competition?
Well, for me, Josh, I think you're more impressed in Bilbao than I am. Fundamentally, I think they are a less effective team than some of the teams Rangers have already beaten over the last few years. Yes, they're good. Yes, they're particularly good in wide areas with the Williams brothers. I was impressed by several of their players last night. The big guy up front, whose name escapes me right now, who doesn't play regularly in the league, Samadi, 6'4", what a tank. He'd be brilliant for Scottish football. I know we can't afford him to bring him here any of our clubs, but I really like the look of him as a big, sort of solid striker with quick feet. There was a number of players that stood out, but I think if you look at the 2 ties, Rangers were really unlucky, and a lot of key moments went against them.
Yeah,
I think injuries, red cards, fine refereeing decisions that went in the opposite direction. You look at that Suter, it's a penalty, but I would say it was probably on the softer side. I mean, I would want it. I would call for it. I think it was the right call, but it's not a stonewaller. Clearly, Dessers should have had a penalty. And I know I'm going on about refereeing decisions, but these things can make a huge difference. And in the first leg, Robin Proper, is it a red card? Is it not? For me, again, I think it's one of those ones that's probably an orange card. It's one that could definitely be a red card, or it could be a yellow. It's these fine margins in it. Probably a red, but so I feel like normally after a game like this, you want to pick up and you pick out players that you think have been poor, management decisions that have been poor. I know that we've discussed Diamandi and we'll probably go back into that. But overall, I just don't really feel like that there's a lot more that Barrie and the team could have done in the circumstances. I feel like the circumstances did conspire against Rangers. Fate conspired against Rangers over these 2 legs. But I didn't look at the games and think, here's a great team that's just too good. This is a patchwork Rangers with Ridvan Yilmaz at right back.
Yeah.
This is not Rangers at full strength. I think Dujon Sterling just is a massive miss in a game like this.
Yeah.
He gives you so much in terms of his pace and his athleticism. And, if you could get Dujon Sterling fit, I think you have to look at him as your identikit kind of player Rangers should be looking at. The power, the physique, the pace. and perhaps that's what's lacking elsewhere in the team. But overall, I think it's been a really, really good European run. I'm going to be glass as half full about it. And ultimately, players like Czerny, like Sterling, have had very, very good tournaments. And Raskin was, I thought, outstanding last night. Made so many interceptions. So many times when you thought, oh, Rangers are in trouble here, he just nicked back in and took the ball off somebody's toes. Absolutely superb. So, mixed feelings, Josh. Mixed feelings.
Yeah, I mean, understandably, a lot of the comments is reflecting on that referee call. We obviously touched on it last night. The fact that even if it's not a red card and a penalty, the penalty should be given. The fact that doesn't go to VAR is pretty inexplicable. And Barry Ferguson hasn't really spoke about referee calls, I don't think, since he came into the job. Correct me if I'm wrong, but justifiably was upset at that last night, because we'll get into what went wrong for Rangers from there. But given how they'd started, if you go 1-0 up, being in the stadium last night, the atmosphere was incredible, but it also was teetering at points on could it turn? What's the anxiety like? Can Rangers use this to their advantage? And if they'd gone 1-0 up, which they probably would have from the penalty spot, it's just a really poor decision that goes against them. And that'll be the frustration, Johnny, because I know that Athletic didn't score from that penalty last week.
Yeah.
But the Sterling penalty is an interpretation of the law, but it feels so soft.
Yeah.
I think the proper red card is right. But when you combine it all together, as you say, it's just the wrong side of thin margins that to beat a team who are clearly better than you, you need that to go your way, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely you do. And that rub of the green that Rangers needed, that sometimes I think they had on the road to Seville, just wasn't there last night, and certainly wasn't there at Ibrox. And there was enough grit and determination, and I think the 12th man of the crowd, to see them through in that first leg. But last night, I just think once you have those injuries, I'm sitting here thinking, what could Barrie do here? What are the options at his disposal? How could you change this game? And the obvious one was Igaman for Dessers. But outside of that, you're going up against a really, really good team, and you know that if you change the shape, if you go all gung-ho, this is a side that's going to just thread balls in behind your defence and pick you off. Yeah. So it was a really, really, really difficult situation that they found themselves in. I also thought the timing of the goal was really, really, really important for Bilbao. You talk about the crowd getting that goal before half-time, Josh. It's the most important goal you could ever get if you go 1-0 up just before half-time. Changes the entire complexion of the second half. Not only that, but then Rangers get the double whammy. They're re-energised, they're refocused. Barrie gets a hold of them in the dressing room. Leon Balogun comes back out on the pitch and then walks straight back off the pitch with what is a really unlucky impact injury. That's not something that you can blame his faltering body. I know it's happened to him before, but it's only because he throws himself in for headers. So that's another moment. It's these fine moments, these fine issues of timing have really, really played against Rangers today.
Yesterday. Yesterday. So we've discussed that. I think we're in agreement that those calls make a huge impact, and you can't analyse the game without discussing them. But I still think there is aspects of the game you can talk about subsequently. We'll get to a few of the comments because I think there's a lot of interesting opinion in there. Jim McCarroll, friend of the show, says, "Boy, do we need change. New owners, definitely a new manager, and another clear out of players." He says we can't keep going on like this.
Can I just throw something back at Jim there?
No, okay. You've only let me get through one comment before.
I know, but I've talked about this in my newsletter, and if anyone wants to go to download my newsletter and hear what I've got to say on this, just sign up. It's completely free. I actually don't think Rangers need a complete clear out of the players. I think there's quite a lot of good players in there.
Yeah,
I don't think it's a squad anywhere near good enough to win the league. But you look at this European run, you look at the games against Celtic this year, I don't think there's too much wrong in those games. The Rangers' issue is not really about quality. It's more about the ability to unlock a defence and having another tactic that will allow them to show their qualities, to beat the likes of Hibs and St Mirren and Kilmarnock, and the other teams in the Scottish Premiership who have vastly reduced budgets and are able to take points in a way that they aren't when they play against Celtic. So what is that all about? And that's what Rangers need to get to the bottom of. But I don't think that necessarily has to mean that 20 players have to come in. That's not worked before, and it won't work this time. I still think a lot of players need to be coming in. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think the baby needs to go out with the bathwater. I think there's 8 or 9 players there at the core of the team that are pretty handy, especially if you can bring Cherny in. I don't think we should be having to go into this summer window talking about a full rebuild. I think part of the work for the rebuild was done, and some of these players are very good. Josh, you've been a real defender of Jeffrey, and I thought you were vindicated last night at times. I thought he performed well overall. Had a couple of moments, as he always does, but he's a perfect example of a player who's come in, 500 grand, young player, new culture, doesn't learn the language, doesn't know the language, and there's a few like that. You look at Hamza Egaman, Cortez. Scottish football is very, very different to the rest of European football, and in the case of Cortez, South American football. Although he obviously came from France. And it takes a bit of adapting to, and I think you're going to see more from quite a few of these players as they develop. There's not a lot of patience at Rangers. There never has been. I've seen very, very good players draw the ire of the Ibrox crowd, and that's about standards, and that's part of what gives Rangers the true sense of institution that it carries. But at the same time, in modern football, when Rangers can't go out and sign the England captain for £1.5 million like they did with Terry Butcher in 1986 and the England goalkeeper and Chris Woods, there has to be a level of understanding that players are coming in as part of a project, and that they'll take 1-2 seasons to come to fruition, to become the blossoming flowers that the scouting team think they can become. Rangers aren't signing finished articles. So I think there's an underbed, there's a foundation there of good young talent that with the right coach can blossom and become something quite good.
Lovely imagery there. Flowers blossoming. Very poetic. Let's get to some more comments. I will come back to that point because I agree, but I want to get some comments first on the game and the wider implications. James Glasgow says, Barrie has to take responsibility. Taking Dio out of midfield was a poor decision.
Yeah.
Brian says the confusion after the Yilmaz injury didn't help matters last night. Should have brought in Ciala on instead of Barron and left Diomande in midfield. RFC says wrong team pick. Dessers never held the ball up and let us get up the park. Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. It was quite something that a lot of people spoke about pre-match. Stephen says events aside, Rangers were rank rotten on the ball. Our ball distribution was below professional standards, and 55 Kings. Diomande was absolutely outstanding. Should never been moved to left wing back.
Just on that ball distribution thing.
We're getting
pass completion was 82 for Bilbao and 79 for Rangers. There wasn't actually that much difference. Both teams were a bit shaky on the ball.
Yeah, fair enough. But in terms of getting the ball forward, when Rangers moved Diomande out the midfield, it crumbled. So I think there's two things here. Number one, I do think Barry Ferguson got it wrong, and you can give him. It's not totally on him by any means. There's a reason I think generally that you don't see managers switching formations 4, 5, 6 times a game. It's confusing for players, and you saw that confusion. It was palpable. Now, Barry Ferguson said the day before the game, the way we are going to play, if one person switches off, it will hurt the whole team. And you saw that for the goal. And if you actually look at the defensive line just before the penalty, Suter's well ahead of Balogun. It's all quite disorganised. And I have no doubt that is a knock-on effect of the fact that Suter was playing centre back, wasn't having to check his shoulder in the same way. It's all up in the air. Everyone's still adjusting. And Liam Balogun kind of hinted at that in the mix zone. But taking Diomande out the midfield, it wasn't so much, Johnny, of what it did off the ball for Rangers. It was the fact that they couldn't then really keep the ball. He was the only player that was taking it in the midfield and taking it under pressure. And for me, that did two things. It allowed Rangers to get up the park, but it also kind of stopped Athletic pressing so aggressively because they knew this guy can turn us, as he did on a number of occasions. And if people go back and look at the the passage of play immediately before the penalty, how the penalty is conceded, That for me is what I think you're referencing, but a lot of comments are referencing too. That is the root issue that Rangers have. They're fundamentally not a good team in possession. It's 11 seconds between them losing the ball with a long Liam Kelly goal kick and conceding that penalty. And I just think it's a perfect depiction of the fact that they can't really, they think they're relieving pressure, or the attempt is to relieve pressure by just kicking for territory. But actually what that did is it just created space for Athletic Club to attack into. So I guess there's 2 points there to throw back at you, Johnny. Number one is I do think Barry Ferguson got it wrong, and it was a costly error. And the fact that he brings in Ciala on at the break is a demonstration of that. And then you have to sacrifice Hadji, who wasn't glistening, but as we spoke about pre-match, and as I think you saw, he was pretty competent, and he won the ball back on a few occasions, and I think had a better game than Barron. So you've got the error of the substitution, but also this root fundamental issue that Rangers have and has been evident all season, and I think Philippe Clement has to take a lot of responsibility for. They're not a team who have been coached with a fundamental idea of what they do on the ball, and that shows in moments like that when they're under pressure.
Yeah, well, I can't disagree. That's a more detailed and in-depth professional analysis that I'm able to give, Josh. But it makes absolute sense to me. That's why you're the tactical expert. I look at that goal. Just talking about that Suter goal. Are you talking about the losing possession in the lead up to that?
Yeah, so it's a goal kick, and just before it, and it's 11 seconds between Dessers not winning the kind of second ball at the top end of the park, uncontested header for Athletic, and then Sanadi being brought down by Suter.
It's really clever running by Sanadi though, because he's Leon Balogun's man, and he kind of runs across Balogun into Suter's space and behind Suter. Before Suter knows it, he's there, and he thinks he's got to deal with the danger, and he's not had the time to kind of realise his bearings and that Leon Balogun's there. Yeah. So it's a clever run, but I take your point, and there was too many times that I think Dessers just didn't hold the ball up. I know it's not his game. I know he's always looking to stretch, but there has to be a little bit of game intelligence there where you're saying, listen, this is what the team needs right now. Yeah. You know, something that you don't need to be coached on, that you just have the kind of savvy to go, right, I need to come short for a wee while, take the ball in, and allow this team to get up the pitch. And I know I'm the only guy that's going to stretch in behind, but needs must.
Yeah.
And why can't he do that? He's capable of doing that.
I don't know how capable he is of doing that. I don't know. I think I agree. A lot. It's easy to speak in hindsight, but I think that was the wrong call, because Egerman, to repeat something we've said so much over the recent weeks, he's more multifaceted. He gives you options to get up the pitch, and then it was maybe early on. You see, if he kept Diomande in midfield, and if Rangers continued to play as they had in that first 15 to 20 minutes, maybe the Dessers decision is fine, because you are getting up the pitch more through the midfield. But when Rangers start to go more direct, it just doesn't work. I think the only time Dessers really holds the ball up or links play well from the top of the pitch, for me, is when he's kind of under pressure and a team are pressing, and it can be like a one-touch layoff or a flick in behind. But when there's men around them ready to pick off a mistake, as you saw in the first leg, it just happens too readily. Obviously, Ferguson then goes to a kind of 4-4-2 at the start of the second half without many other options, and Egerman's kind of playing off the right in the end. For me, I think it's been a misstep for Rangers as a club and their decision making, that whoever you want to put this at the feet of, and ultimately with no sporting director, I think it falls down to the CEO's decision to choose who the manager is. I don't think not playing Hamza Egerman out of position for 3 months, that's not been a clever move, and it doesn't help his value. No. Rangers are more likely, from what we understand, to sell Nico Rask in the summer than Hamza Egerman. Egerman signed a 5-year contract last summer, but he's 22, and the areas of his game you need to improve can be improved, whereas I feel like Dessers at 30, you know who he is, for better and for worse. Sometimes it's better. Last night was a case of it being worse, and they weren't able to get up the pitch really throughout the night after that opening 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's a classic case of a Scottish manager who it's kind of in our coaching culture here to just stick with the guy that's the hard worker, that's the big personality, that's sort of man's man. And I think Dessers is all those sort of things. And they maybe look at Hamza and see a guy who is in his first sort of professional season, very rough around the edges in a lot of ways, and in some ways polished. But rough around the edges, I think, in terms of maybe his ability to take tactical direction and things like that. And they just think you better to go with a guy who's experienced. And listen, this is valueless unless we said it before the game. And fortunately, we said it before the game. Everyone's got a degree in hindsight, but I think this is one where Barrie deserves a little bit of criticism.
Yeah. And I guess if we look at it more, and we'll do this next week over the kind of coming weeks, as events off the pitch probably take a little bit more credence of events on them again. But Rangers' decision, I think, to go for Ferguson, a lot of that was motivated by the short term. There wasn't many options, and I think he made a lot of good decisions to get them to this point, switching to the back five in Istanbul, winning away at Parkhead after that Thursday night. And listen, these fundamental issues we're talking about on the ball, they're not. I don't think they're his fault. They're Clement's fault, or the club's culture's fault. And if we're being critical of certain decisions, I think we did it tons about Clement's inability to change things and inability to change from the touchline. But now, Johnny, you have 5 games, to move the conversation forward. What next? You have 5 games. Surely that is about playing in Ciala and Egaman at number 9.
Has to be.
Bailey Rice and Finlay Curtis. My argument would have been, though, that should have come in. The Rangers have veered from that path for the last couple of months. And yes, you're throwing all your eggs into this European basket, understandably. But again, I don't think that decision looks great with hindsight. Because I thought Ciala, when he came on last night, looked pretty composed.
Ciala is a really good young player who is suited to European football because that's what he knows. He's very good on the ball. I think he's a crisp passer. And it's nice to see someone with a left foot being able to ping the ball quickly through the lines. I don't think he's quite up to the hustle and bustle and aggression of Scottish football. That'll take time. That'll take exposure. But he needs to get that. And we'll be critical of him. He'll make mistakes. But it's part of what I was talking about earlier, Josh, about young players. And there's no better time than these next 5 games. Now, I take Celtic out of that and say the next 4 games because there's no dead rubber Old Firm game. It matters for the bragging rights. It's important. If Rangers win 3 Old Firm games this season, it does mean something. It will upset Celtic fans and it will make Rangers fans very happy. So I think that game is one that you have to go with your best team. The rest of the time, though, I think some brave decisions have to be made. I would go with Mason Munn in goal. I wouldn't go with Liam Kelly.
Mason Munn?
I'd give the 18-year-old a chance.
Fair enough.
Why not, Josh? That. Why not? Let's see what he's made of. Let's throw him in. Let's be brave. Butland's not going to be. But is Butland going to be around next season after what's happened? I would give Mason Munn an opportunity. I think Finlay Curtis needs an opportunity. Bailey Rice needs an opportunity. Clinton and Ciala needs an opportunity. Hans Egaman needs a run. I'd like to see more of Danilo, given his underlying numbers. And I know, is that regressive? I don't think so. Danilo's what, 25? So are you going to write off a £6 million player, or are you going to give him a chance to get some game time under his belt and go into next season firing? Now, I think Barrie might not do that because I still think he probably feels like that he has some slim chance of getting the job on the basis that, if you're holding it when the music stops, given the lack of time, there might be an opportunity for him. Probably buoyed by the fact that, he's got so many cheerleaders at his former organisation, just ridiculously plugging him constantly for the job, regardless of results. But the facts are, I don't think Barry's done enough. If you look at Europe, it's been pretty good. I think he's carried himself brilliantly, but domestic results, I think has Barrie got 4 wins since he started? That's it.
Yeah.
It's not been quite good enough. And listen, Barrie will say, well, I can only do what I can do with the tools that I have. And he's tried a lot to give him more, but I don't think it's quite worked out. And ultimately, just Josh, Barry's just not got the experience to be the Rangers manager. And if he goes away and does a great job at another club, I think then he'll have an opportunity to become the Rangers manager again. And by the way, I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the dugout again down the line if another manager doesn't work out. I think there'll be a clamour to bring Barrie back in as caretaker, because he's done so well in terms of the elements off the pitch, in terms of rallying the fans, the way he's spoken. He's a legend, so he gets that extra level of buy-in. All that stuff's been brilliant.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about the tests that he'll face, and he will face tests as Rangers manager, then it's massively important, I think, that it's someone with a bit of experience.
Yeah, I think over the course he's carried himself very well, and it's a difficult job. Like, again, last night you look at how many defenders does he have injured. Is it a different story? And he will rightly point to this. I'm sure he would probably concede that the Diomande decision was the wrong one. Yeah. But also, if Ridvan isn't injured and if you get that penalty, is it a totally different story? He got the Liam Kelly decision right. And this is, I think, the whole conversation of a manager, just as we come to a close, it's a bigger issue than a manager. Rangers have had a brilliant European campaign, but their season is over in April. They're not going to win any trophies. It's not just a case of getting the right man in the dugout. That will help, but I think it's about going with an idea, having an identity, having an idea that stretches beyond 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, and ultimately just putting football people in right at the top to make the definitive decisions. This is a conversation that is not isolated to this season, Johnny. But listen, we're going to wrap up there because I'm about to get chipped out of my Airbnb. We obviously, there's no Rangers game over the weekend, but there'll be loads of coverage for people on the Rangers review. And next week too, we'll have a bit of a longer conversation with Derek on Monday, with a bit more space between now, this game, Rangers going out of Europe, and what comes next, these final 5 games of the season. Remember to subscribe for free on the YouTube channel if you've not done so already, and subscribe is just £1 for 6 months over on the Rangers Review website at the moment. Loads of coverage, more reactions to come. Yanis Hadji speaking in the mix zone last night. You can hear that slightly later. But until then, thank you to everyone for joining us live this morning. We'll be back on Monday. Enjoy your weekend until then. We'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.